Call to order the November Mayor and City Council meeting for the City of Taneytown, and I ask that Mayor Pro Tem Foster lead us in the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. We're going to start with a review of the minutes from our October meeting. That was October 7th, 2019. We did have a combined meeting last month, of which we are doing the same this month, now that I think about it. So we will be looking for approval. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 7th, 2019 meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the October 7th, 2019 meeting. Is there any discussion?
Actually, Bradley, I think, is Secretary Ree's name spelled right?
I'm sorry, where are you?
Where are you? Just in the bottom where it's the city manager report down there. Is it supposed to be EE?
I think so, yeah.
Jimmy, I think
Secretary Jimmy Ree?
Yeah, isn't it RHEE?
I can check real quick if you'd
It
like.
is. You're right, it is.
I think
EE. Secretary, Deputy Secretary Jimmy Ree. It's RHEE.
Oh, okay, all right. I think Nancy had spelled it wrong somewhere, and then it kind of just snowballed.
Okay. Councilman Fuller, would you make a motion for that amendment, please?
Certainly. Make the motion to accept the minutes with the change to the spelling of the name.
Okay, there's a motion to amend the motion that is on the floor. I'll seek a second to the amendment.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment to the original motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. All right, we circle back to the original motion, which is the approval of the minutes. Is there any further discussion or amendments for those minutes? Okay, hearing none. Those in favor of approving the minutes as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Very good, they are passed. Thank you. All right, November is Municipal Government Works Month. That is the time that we celebrate the impact that municipal governments have for the residents of municipalities. And as such, I will read a proclamation. I will draw your attention to everyone on council has worn their purple, purple being the official color of Municipal Government Works Month. Some of that purple is harder to see than others, but I assure you it's there. Whereas the City of Taneytown was established in 1754, and whereas the City of Taneytown is one of 157 municipalities incorporated in the state of Maryland, and whereas the Mayor and City Council recognize and celebrate that municipal government represents the most responsive level of government, allowing citizens to have direct access to elected officials, and whereas, in an effort to educate citizens about municipal government and the importance of their participation, the City of Taneytown is proud to promote municipal government awareness. And whereas municipalities have enhanced the quality of life for their respective residents, maintaining natural and historic sites and structures, and helping to make Maryland a great place to live, work, play, and explore. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Taneytown, Maryland, hereby joins the Maryland Municipal League in declaring November to be Municipal Government Works Month in Taneytown. You'll see the Municipal Government Works flag flying in front of City Hall all month, and there are a couple things that myself and council will do throughout the month. This Friday I'll be talking to the fourth graders at Taneytown Elementary School about what it's like to be mayor and what the city government does. Kind of neat educational thing for them. With that, we'll move on. Next, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Since we're doing a combined meeting, I'm looking for public comment for both agenda and non-agenda items. Is there anyone that would like to speak this evening? I do want to recognize while we're here, Commissioner Steve Wance has graced us with his presence. Very happy to see you. Is there anything you wish to say, or would you like to be uncharacteristically quiet this evening?
Purple might be fitting as well, Mr. Mayor, because of last night's activities.
Oh, yeah.
Ballinger City last night, and you can't often say that.
Right,
So,
right.
No, I haven't been here for a while, and I just wanted to stop by. And as always, if there's anything that we can do, let us know. A couple of you were at my chamber breakfast the other day, and I appreciate that.
That was a great
All the
morning.
Great things that are going on. So my door's always open and my phone's always on. So anybody that needs anything, as always, you guys are doing a great job. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you,
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Wance. Appreciate you being here, and your breakfast was great. Was it last Tuesday, I think that took place? Very nice event. Thank you for having us there and for having it in Taneytown.
Compliments returned to you as well, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
With that, I will now open it up to the public comment. All right. Hearing none, I assume everyone is satisfied. We'll move down to resolutions, ordinances, and agreements. We have for introduction this evening the Meads Crossing Dara developer, excuse me, yes.
Councilmember Con.
Thank you, ma'am. That's why I have a good mayor pro tem. Let me ask the council if they have any conflicts of interest on the agenda items this evening.
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right. Now we're going to move into the DARA. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for keeping me straight. DARA for Meads Crossing. This is for introduction. We'll start with a motion to introduce.
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Now for discussion, I would like Mr. Wypreck to kind of kick us off on kind of what we're looking at there.
Okay, sure. The first 2 pages is the amendment. Essentially, we're eliminating a lot of language with regard to groundwater recharge. Section 3.1 currently is about half a page under Section C. That's what the 3rd page that has the 699-0070 at the top. That's the existing language with regard to water recharge. So we're essentially striking everything after paragraph C. So we're striking the lowercase 1, 2, and 3 below that. I'm sorry, through 4 below that. So it's now going to simply read, in connection with the development of the project, the developer shall sufficiently address the minimum requirements of MDE regarding groundwater recharge through the utilization of unused capacity in the city's control that becomes available to the developer. And that's essentially what we've already done. This just will memorialize it and have that in place as we start to develop phase 2 and get phase 2 through the development process.
All right. I know we have 2 members of council that are kind of new to the Meads Crossing DARA, and specifically maybe recharge as well. I'm not sure how familiar they are with recharge. Do you want to talk about that anymore, or what effect this has on Meads Crossing?
So this goes back many years, but going forward, in order for us to pump even our existing wells any harder, we need to link groundwater recharge to each well. Several years ago, MDE changed the way they calculate water appropriations, and we are only allowed to count water that's under our control, or recharge area that's under our control. So even though our wells draw from 2 substantial aquifers that extend well beyond the city limits, we cannot count the rainfall that falls outside of the city limits towards recharging our production wells. So anticipating that we would need to seek permit increases for water allocations when Meads Crossing was in the early stages of planning in their development rights and responsibilities agreement, we spoke to how we could address increasing our permit for the wells and potentially developing another well, and also linking groundwater recharge to those increased permit allocations. It turned out that when we reviewed our capacity and looked at our pumping numbers, and with streetscape tightening up the water line that was in East Baltimore Street, which was a source of a lot of leaks previously, we reran numbers and found that we had capacity for Meads Crossing within our existing permit numbers. So the recharge really became unnecessary for Meads Crossing. We will need that down the road, but not for this particular project.
Right.
So we're basically just getting rid of the language that no longer applies now that we've recalculated things and we know we're good on the water.
Right. Now, is this Meads Crossing project as a whole, or is that by phase?
Work.
I just want to make sure when they come back for phase 2, we don't say, but wait, the Dara. Yeah. Since it doesn't mention phase, I'm assuming it's project as a
I thought it
whole.
was
I
the
believe it
whole.
covers the whole
Okay,
project.
I just wanted,
Right, the Public Works Agreement covers the first phase, Phase 1 and 1A, but the DARA covers
the entire project. Perfect. Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Wyprecht regarding the amended DARA in front of you today?
No, sir.
Okay, is there any discussion among council regarding the amended DARA? All right, hearing none. All in favor of introducing the amended Meads Crossing Developer Rights and Responsibilities Agreement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Very good. That has been introduced and will be up for adoption next month. Is that correct, Mr. Wyprecht?
Yes, we'll have a public hearing. Before we get to that point, the Planning Commission will review the DARA to ensure that it is compliant with the city's comprehensive plan, which is usually not an issue.
Right.
So that will happen at the Planning Commission meeting, and then we'll have a public hearing in December.
Very good. All right, up for adoption this evening is Resolution 2019-13, our monthly water allocation, this one for November 2019. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion regarding Resolution 2019-13? Kind of good segue from talking about recharge into our water allocations. All right, it has been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2019-13, the water allocation for November 2019. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. It is approved. All right, next we'll go back to Mr. Wyprecht for our city manager report. What do you have for us this evening?
Okay, we'll talk a little bit about this a little later. Parks and Rec Advisory Board met, we've covered that. Have a couple revisions to the Parks and Rec CIP. We'll get into that in detail a little bit later. Still working on water and sewer numbers with regard to the Sewell annexation. That's going to take a while. We'll need to, basically now that the city attorney's back in town, we'll need to schedule a meeting with him and our engineer and our hydrogeologist to get that moving again. Roberts Mill Run Stormwater Project and O'Brien Avenue Bridge is moving ahead very nicely. We had a progress meeting last week, and there's a rebar in place for the footer for one of the bridge abutments, so that may, I have not been out there since, that may have been poured at this point, and then the plan is to move across the stream to do the footer for the other side. Work is progressing on schedule, and we're getting a schedule in basically 3-week chunks at this point from the contractor. So moving along very nicely out there. We have proposals to do the repair and renovation of the city office building. We'll talk a little bit more in detail about that under new business. And also another stormwater management retrofit project is in the works, and that is going to be to significantly enlarge the stormwater pond that's behind the homes on Trevanian Terrace, between those homes and the elementary school. So that's the parcel that some of you may recall. We purchased the tax lien for a 3-acre parcel back there several years ago, and I've been going through the process to finish acquisition of that. And much of that parcel will be converted to a wet pond similar to what we're doing at Roberts Mill Run. So it'll have shallow slopes, mowable slopes, and even when you get into the portion that's going to be engineered to stay wet, the slopes remain very shallow to a point where you'd really have to be intending to go swimming or something to get to the point where you would hit the steeper drop off. But that project is still in the concept stage, but it is moving forward. And there's going to be a community meeting on November 12th at the Taneytown Library at 6 o'clock to let the community there know what's going on with the project.
Jim, if I may real quick, is that something that you'd like one of us to attend as well, to be present for, or is that something that is simply administrative?
It's largely administrative. I mean, you certainly are welcome to attend. When we did this for the Roberts Mill Run project, county staff from the Bureau of Resource Management largely ran the meeting, and we just chimed in with regard to the city's portion of the project there, which for the Roberts Mill Run one, of course, was the O'Brien Avenue Bridge. But essentially the city is there for a show of support and sort of solidarity on the project. But the county has done a number of these projects, and they have this routine down, and they do a great job of public outreach and keeping people informed as the projects are going through the planning stages.
Okay.
So you're welcome to attend, but not necessary.
Thank you.
That project, along with the one at O'Brien, does that fulfill all of our obligations for stormwater management in terms of ponds and such?
Well, as we're on a joint permit with the county at this
Right.
point. So the way our memorandum of agreement with the county reads, the county will, permit-wide, we will be in compliance. We will have retrofit at least 20% of the applicable impervious area by the end of the permit. Within each municipality, there was a target to retrofit 50% of the required amount for each municipality. So after these projects, we will have retrofit a considerable amount more acreage than we're required to address. So I want to say it's something like it's not double what we're required to address, but the Roberts Mill Run project is addressing about 80% of what we need to.
Right.
So the Trevanian Terrace project, I think, puts us at almost a 40 or 50% overage beyond what we would need to treat within the city if we were on our own permit.
Right.
But things are, of course, looked at a county-wide level. But we are well on our way to being compliant county-wide as well.
Okay.
And I think we're one of the few Phase 1 jurisdictions that's even close to being
Okay.
compliant.
Great. Do you have anything else for us?
One quick thing, just on the table this evening, there was basically a little finance sheet with green and blue bars. This is just sort of for your information. The treasurer and I have been kicking around some numbers since the audit was completed, and we've talked over time about, trying to identify some trends and in terms of our spending and our debt and things like that. And Barry put this one together after we talked. She also put together some other charts we're still refining. But I just wanted to get this before you. We've done this for the last 5 years of information, and I thought it was a good summary of what our debt is, how much of it is to the utility fund, how much is to the general fund. The left-hand side speaks to our debt policy, and we try not to have a debt service ratio that's more than 10% of our operating revenue, so we're well within that. And also also with the policy, we don't want to have more than 10% of our the assessed value of our property as far as our general fund debt. But the utility debt is a little bit harder because the debt policy talks about it being self-liquidated or supported by the revenues of the utility itself, which Barry and I find a little open-ended. When we went back and looked at some of the previous treasurer's efforts, they have kind of stuck with that same 10% figure for the utility fund, which I don't think that's really what the policy is shooting for. But we just threw this together for your information. If you find this helpful, we can provide it for additional years, but we're trying to work on a way to sort of graph out where we are in terms of debt, our tax base, our revenue, and our fund balance as stated from each annual audit. Just to kind of give a little sense of how we're doing overall, how we're trending over the last several years. And we have managed to retire about $3 million in debt over the last several years, so we're certainly heading in a good direction there. But I just wanted to get that out there for your information. We were talking about it after the presentation of the audit, and Michelle Mills had mentioned some of the key numbers in there that we could be using to identify trends and things of that nature. So we just started kind of throwing some numbers together and trying to figure out what would be a good representation for you to get maybe a stronger feel other than that once a year when we have the audit for where we're going, and also kind of leading up to our budget discussions that will start probably late January or early February.
I think this is great. I really do. And if we could, keep having something like this, kind of maybe, I think the timing is good too. After the audit is like an after-action review type thing. I think it's good. I really like it.
So we can bring something like this periodically.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Wyprecht for his city manager report or about the debt policy chart that he just presented to us? Okay, in your packet was the departmental reports. Are there any questions about the departmental reports? Or anything to add for the departmental reports, Mr. Wyprecht?
Do want to point out, last week I sent an email with regard to a collapsing storm drain line under Stumptown Road. Have a little bit of an update there. I don't know, Councilman Haynes, if you want to jump in as the
Yeah, I'll speak to that.
liaison.
So, Director Smeek and I spoke today, and there's 2 additional sort of emergency repairs that need to be, in his professional opinion, and I agree, conducted right away. And it's a similar problem where it's corrugated pipe that's since fallen in. And he told me that, it's not that they're worse, but they're also not much better. So they need to be taken care of right away. And he did tell me the timeline on this is that it shouldn't take any longer than the middle of the week. So, I can't imagine it not being done past Thursday. So.
And
But
my top will be a little weather dependent.
Yeah,
but
and
the
not to
pipe should
interrupt
be-
you, Jim, but he did also mention, and I just want to make sure this is correct, this will require a budget amendment?
Very likely.
Okay.
I think we're probably going to exceed our street maintenance, although, well, yes, because we did budget more in capital, I think, than we're going to spend, but that was capital, not operating, so we may see a budget amendment for this, between this and the Bancroft Street repair that we did.
Right.
Actually, no, I'm sorry, I think that was pre-July, so we should be okay on that one. But Bancroft Street was $15,500. That was one pipe, but it was a much larger pipe, and it was also much deeper. So these should not be as much, but we do have 3 separate digs. But the equipment needed is much more modest. The 2 lines that Councilman Haynes mentioned are only about 3 feet deep. The one at Bancroft was more like 20 feet. So, it's not nearly the project that was. But we are going to go ahead and take care of those because we want to take care of it before we end up with a
Sinkhole.
a serious divot in the,
Yep.
in the road that could cause some damage or
Okay. Any questions about departmental reports from the council?
Just a quick question, maybe on a somewhat related note, because I know a lot of this stuff often comes through you, Jim. I noticed that we had something on our desk from Veterans Day observance from the VFW. Have we heard anything from the Legion in town?
we have not, but we'll check and email if there's an event.
Thank you very much.
All right, on the council table this evening is a legal report from Mr. Gullo. He is not able to be with us this evening. If you do have questions about that, feel free to contact him directly. Did he give you anything additional, Mr. Wyprick, to add to his report?
He did not.
Okay. Very good. Council can peruse that, and again, questions can go straight to the city attorney. We're going to move into old business, bringing back up again the capital improvement program for Parks and Recreation. You have, looks like a chart on the table here. Is this the amended one from the advisory board?
This is an amended one that I put together based on the feedback that I had from Parks Director Mitchell and the letter from the advisory board that we saw last month. So I shifted a number of things around, trying to accommodate the higher priority. For example, for the resurfacing the walking trail, I moved that up to next year. We've already applied for funds for Taneytown High School Park, so we're keeping that in place. And the pavilion project, I pushed back a year for pavilions for FY22 and FY23. And that project has been updated based on the feedback that we got to renovate the pavilions rather than replace them with new structures. So the pavilions are anticipated to be, and this was noted, I think, in Bob's report last month, $18,500 per pavilion to do new roofs and to add concrete floors to the pavilions as was suggested. So that brings the cost down significantly compared to what was in there previously to replace the pavilions. And we've also updated the phase 1 of developing the 22 acres at Memorial Park. We've moved that up into the 5-year range. It previously was not in the 5-year. It didn't make the 5-year cutoff originally with the draft that was circulated earlier. And we do have an updated cost for the Memorial Park of $527,000. So, and that's detailed on the page that has a little photo of the park area in the bottom. So that breaks out the construction cost of $367,000 and then the various engineering, construction management, contingency, and engineering that goes into it. So that may be reduced a bit by the fill that's going on in conjunction with the Roberts Mill Run stormwater management retrofit, since we're using the overburden from that project to help level the site to begin with. So we may see some savings there in terms of actually how much dirt we need to move around. And just for those who may not recall or weren't aware, at Memorial Park, we scraped the topsoil off and stockpiled it so that we can bring the spoil, so to speak, from the Roberts Mill Run project over, but that's going to be very rocky, not something that we really want to build a playing field on or really do much with. So it is going to be compacted, and then the topsoil that was scraped off from the park will be put back in place, only more level now than it was before. So that'll be, and the fill will be compacted so that we can develop a sports field and a parking lot on top of it without having issues of settling in the future. So.
Regarding that particular project, I'm wondering if we can include in the engineering a stormwater management engineering for all of Memorial Park. to address the swampy areas throughout.
We can certainly expand that.
Okay. I mean, it needs to be addressed. If we can get an idea of what it would take to resolve that, I think it's something we should look at.
We can delve into that. And
Okay.
Interestingly, I came across a proposal from CDM Smith from several years ago when I was doing some park research. And apparently they had put together a proposal to address the discharge from West Baltimore Street. I think it was during the streetscape window where we were concerned about flooding issues in the park because of the storm drain that was being rebuilt as part of the streetscape project, and that last point where it discharges out close to the message board sign towards the park. So there was a lot of back and forth with State Highway at that point, and the final word was that we weren't going to need to extend some discharge, either swale or underground facility to get the runoff back to the pond area in the rear of the park. But we are obviously left with an area that gets kind of swampy.
A little bit.
Regularly.
Yeah.
So we can certainly revisit that, and we could make that, I mean, it isn't specific to the 22 acres, but
But it's Memorial
having
Park.
that, right, having that, at least the drainage needs identified can maybe help us develop a more comprehensive plan for the park overall.
Right.
And this 22 acres will just be part and parcel of that.
Right.
Okay, we'll get on that.
Okay. The other thing I'd like to bring up is we have money budgeted in FY20 for repair and resurface tennis courts, which they may be in some sort of need for that. I think it is more crucial that we look at resurfacing the walking trail at Roberts Mill, which is a safety issue, resurfacing the basketball court at Roberts Mill, because that is horrendous, the condition that it's in. Interestingly, when you add up the cost of number 5152, the Roberts Mill, they come up to the same price as number 47, the tennis court resurfacing. My personal suggestion, it's up to council if they want to move that way, is that we take those two Roberts Mill projects, move them to FY20, and delay the tennis courts maybe 1 or 2 years, because I do believe that's a more pressing need right now. But I'll leave that to council.
And-
Mr. Mayor,
No, go ahead, Councilman.
as we discussed before, you're right. I mean, the walking trail, it's only going to get worse. Yeah, there is a safety issue there. There's an aesthetics issue there. So let's get that squared away, is what I recommend. A couple of things we had talked about in our meeting for the capital works projects. We don't need new pavilions. You know, I don't know that the roofs are leaking, but there's no windows either. So the goal is not really, you know, waterproof in a hurricane. But, you know, painting on the pavilions, putting cement in the floors, you can't clean them out. If you've ever had crabs down there at one of the old feeds they used to have, it's a mess for a long time. So, but cementing is a few $1,000s, and not even $18,000 that was budgeted for the roofs and the painting. Our city staff, and I'd help, and we can get some gangs going. We're starting some volunteerism efforts, and we need to use those to keep our costs down. But we do need a storage shed out at Taneytown High School Park. The sheds that are there right now, if you've not seen them, it's, you know, I mean, it's one of Jim has written one of those letters he used to send me on a code violation.
Well, and that's the thing, we're lacking storage facilities at all of the parks. Memorial Park desperately needs at least one, if not two, storage facilities. THS, I'm sure Roberts Mill, the soccer program, wouldn't mind having a bigger storage facility. I just think there's places that we could not bite the whole bullet if it's not completely necessary. I mean, the pavilions are structurally sound. Some cement inside for the floor, as Councilman Hale mentioned, and a fresh coat of paint. for the time being. But my big concern right now is the safety issues at Roberts Mill Park.
And then on that note, I had brought up a couple meetings ago if it was possible that all of the resurfacing that was, being contemplated at Roberts Mill Park, if that was done at the same time, if that might reduce the cost at all. Was that ever looked into? Or are we still in process?
I think that it's been pushed off until spring in terms of scheduling anything. I don't think since shifting over to the police department, Bob's time has been spent much more with police stuff than park stuff, so I think
that's okay.
that's been put on the back burner for the incoming Parks and Rec director to,
Because with weather, we weren't able to do it anyway.
Right, and I was just wondering maybe because, again, if it was done at the same time, if there might be some kind of cost reduction.
What I don't see on here is, I believe we also budgeted for FY20 resurfacing of the basketball court at Memorial Park. Is that correct? Or was that the parking lot at Memorial Park?
the parking lot was slated for repair, and CDM has been working on basically a spec for that to try to figure out how bad the damage is and how to really repair it properly. And at this point, actually, as of last week, Brian Lubenow, our main contact at CDM Smith, advised that he was very concerned about continuing to try to do these patching projects,
right,
that it really appears that the parking lot should just be reconstructed in total.
Right.
And we did not budget enough to really tackle that this year.
Okay.
So, and also we have the question of being able to take that offline in order to reconstruct it with all the use that it gets. Mm-hmm. So the only time that it really isn't used is like in the dead of winter.
Which is not ideal time to...
Right, which is not the best time to get into a project like that, so...
Right.
That is something that's probably going to end up falling to the new Parks and Rec director as well.
Right. Okay, overall, does the council wish to make any changes to the capital improvement program in front of them?
I would agree with your suggestion, Mr. Mayor, of moving up 51 and 52 to FY20.
Okay, would you like to make that as a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that we move number 51 and 52 on the Parks and Rec CIP up to a higher priority to fiscal year 2020.
All right, to FY20. Do you have a time that you'd like to push number 47 back to? I mean, probably FY22 would make the most sense.
That's what I would say, yeah, FY22.
All right, so do I have a second for that motion?
Second?
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that we move number 51, 52, Roberts Mill Park, resurfacing of walking trail and resurface basketball court to FY20, and then move number 47, Memorial Park, repair, resurface tennis courts to FY22. Is there any further discussion on that? All right, hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that takes care of that portion. Now, do we want a motion to... Okay.
We were discussing the pavilions just doing the concrete. Do we have a price for that, just the concrete part of it?
That was estimated at being, that was about 10 of the $18,000 per pavilion.
Per pavilion, so that's
I mean, it's still...
$80,000 for 8 pavilions to get done. Not now. Right now, only 1, 2, 3, 4. Only 5 of them have gravel.
Right, because the other ones...
The rest of them are already pads. So it's really estimate $50,000.
And the other thing is we don't have to do them all at once. We could stretch it out, do 1 a year, 2 a year, something like that.
Right.
If you want to put money in other areas.
Keeping in mind, we did shift 71,750 to FY20 out of 21. If we shift 50,000 to FY21 for cement floors for the 5 pavilions at Memorial Park, does that make sense?
It does.
That still comes out at a net, essentially a net gain for us. So,
All right, well, then I would make the motion to do the floors in the FY21.
all right, approximately $50,000, is that correct? Okay. Do I have a second for that motion?
And we're
Second.
talking about all of them, right?
Yes, that would be all.
Yeah, the 5.
Yeah.
Second.
So wait, what are we moving down? I'm
So
sorry.
essentially, what we're almost eliminating 50, basically.
Okay.
49 would be the installation of concrete flooring in 5 pavilions at Memorial Park, approximating at $50,000, $10,000 apiece, and then moving that to FY21. Is that correct, Councilwoman Fuller? Yes. Very good. I did receive a second, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Any further discussion on that? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. All right, let's continue kind of moving on there. Is there any additional amendments we'd like to see to the Parks and Rec CIP?
I just have a general question about the CIP. Is it too premature to start talking about consensus and how we want to get consensus on what the development of Memorial Park should actually look like? I mean, do we want to get more community input about what type of field should be there and how many and things of that nature? Do we want to have like a joint?
One of the things that I think would help having the Park and Rec guy is dealing with the MML group and the county group.
Okay.
They have a lot of experience and stuff to draw from, especially when it comes to like doing a master plan type idea. So I would say once we get a Parks and Rec director,
Okay.
have him get involved with that and
Yeah, and I know a lot of this conversation is going to hinge off of filling that position.
Right.
But my next question was going to be, is it terribly inappropriate to have a public hearing for this type of thing?
No, not at all. I mean,
Is that something-
In fact, that would be an appropriate use for a town hall.
Okay.
That
Is that
really
something we
would
want to
be.
think about? Maybe,
and it's, believe it or not, way back when, they did kind of do that
Yeah.
already.
Right.
And
But even that plan has changed since
yeah,
then.
so it's
Yeah.
just, so everything, and the needs have kind of changed a little
Yeah,
bit. So,
absolutely.
So any updates would be.
I think as we nail it down to, like, here we have FY23, that gets us kind of in that final dash to get that town hall going again, to get the final plans really figured out. And that's something that will be one of the top priorities for whoever the new Parks and Rec director ends up being. But very good suggestion. I'd love to see the return of some good town halls.
Add also that of course, even as we move through the CIP department by department, that actually executing these projects is going to be contingent upon funding availability. And, just by way of example, the 22 acres at Memorial Park, just for phase 1, we're looking at over $500,000.
Right.
We don't have $500,000 in the fee in lieu of open space fund. So
We're being
just to
optimistic.
put things in a little perspective,
Right.
we still need to be cognizant of our fiscal limitations, and, certainly we're
Right.
getting, that fee in lieu fund is being replenished, but we've allocated, portions of the existing balance towards Bollinger Park, and of course the remaining other projects that we've already funded but haven't spent money on yet.
Right.
So these, we do have some expensive projects in here, and that segues into the idea that we may want to have the conversation about having an actual park impact fee as opposed to the fee in lieu of open space that we currently have.
Right.
So those
Yeah.
are I know the idea has come up off and on for several years, but we have, when we looked at that 25-year exercise, the parks list was pretty extensive, so that's going to take a lot of money.
When do you think it'd be appropriate to have that conversation about having an actual park impact fee? Because when I was on the board, we
Anytime
talked
you
about
want.
it all the time.
Probably.
Budget time.
Okay, budget time?
I mean, it's really part of our fee schedule, correct? Which, I mean, we can amend our fee
And
schedule.
Right, what we would need to do is basically come up with a formula and decide, we want to have, say, X square feet of active recreation space for each citizen in the city, and run the numbers and come up with, what does that equate to per household? And, we have to have a basis to come up with a charge. We can't just pull a figure like, $1,000 out of the air and say, okay, we're going to charge every house $1,000. It's like, well, what does that $1,000 go towards exactly? So we need to really flesh that out and be able to justify whatever number we come up with.
Right.
And it could be a very modest number. It depends upon the goals that we're going to set for for the parks program. If we want to have a very robust park system and things, then the number would have to be higher. But
Yeah, right.
that is a conversation that I think during our budget process would be an appropriate time to visit that topic.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else for the capital improvement program? Do I have a motion to approve the capital improvement program as amended?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Very good. It's been moved and seconded to approve the capital improvement program for Parks and Rec as amended. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. All right, that is approved. Jim, you have all the notes for the changes we made? Great.
Yep. Arrows and X's and I think I'm
Did
good.
you use your red pen on that?
Didn't think to color code.
All right, still in old business. We're going to the Bollinger Park Site Development Plan. Do you have something for us, Mr.
Well,
Wyckoff?
I was hoping to have a proposal from CDM Smith on this because we apparently back in, I suppose around 2010, we had started to work on the project with Arrow Engineering. They developed a concept for us. We were in the preliminary plan stage, and at that point realized that there were some things that we didn't really care for, or I'll say some flaws with the concept that we had already looked at and approved, and decided that we were going to go back to the drawing board. At that point, we decided that CDM Smith would be our engineer going forward. We never executed a specific agreement with them to do this as a project. So what work they have done so far has just been under our general consulting agreement with CDM Smith. Unfortunately, they were not able to deliver a proposal in time for the meeting, so hopefully that will be before us for next month.
Okay.
And they're also working on a number of other Taneytown related things, such as the specs for the belt filter press project and the sludge building and those sort of things too. So they've got their plate full of Taneytown projects as well, but
Okay.
that's what I was hoping to have that before you tonight to go ahead and again, we've funded the project, but it's easier for us to have an agreement in place with our engineer so that they have a project code and everything's lumped under that for our tracking purposes rather than just doing it as general consulting.
Right.
So I'd like to, as I said, hopefully we will have that in hand for next month.
Okay, since we don't have the information, I'll seek a motion to table until next month.
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
All right, is there any discussion on tabling the Bollinger Park Site Development Plan until next month when we have more information? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. All right, we shall see it again next month. Sliding right on into new business.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I apologize.
Yes, Councilman, what can I do for you?
Eric Mender from the Astronomical Society was interested in some kind of update about what was going on with Bollinger Park. Is there anything other than this that you would like me to convey to him?
I think that about sums it up. Obviously, we've funded development of the first phase, which is just going to be the small parking area, some trail, a portion of the trail network, and stormwater management for those features. And we, even though we're lacking a specific agreement at this point, you know, we do have a concept in place. We should be able to be under construction, you know, within this fiscal year. I certainly want to be expending funds since we did allocate the monies for it this year. So now whether it will be complete within the fiscal year is another question. But.
Right.
And what point, I guess, he's also curious about what point he would begin to more thoroughly get involved with the process.
And I think that would be, well, we just kind of went through the 5-year CIP for parks, and I would think that we're probably looking outside of the immediate 5 years based on the projects that we have already here before we would get into phase 2.
Right.
Thank you very much.
I would probably suggest having him reach out to the chair of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board or Councilman Hale as liaison to Parks and Rec.
I will do so.
Just to have that, whatever conversation needs to happen should happen there.
If the funding model may have changed since the last time we spoke about that, that could also influence how quickly it would be done.
Right. So I think having a conversation sooner rather than later is appropriate. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to hit the ground immediately. I think it is time to probably circle back and have more discussion with him.
Councilman, if with your permission, I'll give you your contact information to Mr. Bender.
Sure.
Lovely.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Anything else before we move on? All right, into new business, we have our monthly financial report. Do I have a motion to approve the monthly financial report?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? All right, it has been moved and seconded to approve the monthly financial report. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed say nay. Very good. That brings us to our accounts payables. I will again seek a motion to approve.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on the accounts payables? All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the accounts payables. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. Very good. This will bring us to Mr. Wyprecht again for architectural services for city office repair and renovation. Sir?
And this is really just for your information because the dollar amounts are small enough that we don't need formal council approval to move ahead with this. But we did receive proposals from 3 different architectural firms, Dean Camlin, CDM Smith, and Nochler and Hull. And they're 2 were very close price-wise. One was considerably more, but there was the proposal was a bit more extensive, but CDM Smith came in much higher than the others. And while it was a very thorough proposal, cost-wise, it was just well beyond the others. So that kind of left us down with Nochler and Hall, which is actually the firm that BMK, for those who have been around for a while may recall, BMK is the firm that designed the police department and the renovations to this building back in the early 2000s. They also did the fire department's expansion some years ago. So, but they merged with, BMK merged with Nochler and Hull, but some of the principals that were involved in our project were still on board. So that's why we ended up seeking a proposal for them. Between them and Dean Camlin, while the proposals were broken out a little bit differently, when we tried to kind of make it apples to apples, they were within $400 of each other. And, but in talking things through and reviewing the proposals with the Director of Public Works, we felt like Dean Camlin would be the one we'd want to work with, and feel like we'll get a good product, a good design from him. So the cost for architectural services from Dean Camlin will be $10,735. And that does include assistance with bidding and some construction administration as well. So that's who we're planning to go with. We'll go ahead and move forward with an agreement with him. I've played phone tag with him today. So he originally had included mechanical and electrical services as well as far as the design goes, but that is not a very extensive requirement for the project, so we've decided to go with more of a design build approach where the mechanical and electrical contractor will essentially handle their own design. We're not doing anything out of the ordinary. It's largely just partition walls, outlets, telephone lines, Ethernet, nothing that really warrants a very specialized electrical design. And as far as the HVAC systems, very minimal changes from what's in place now. So that's something that an HVAC contractor should easily be able to lay out for us. So, so that's the direction we're heading, and hopefully we'll get some drawings happening here. There will be I guess the first stage is considered schematic design. I liken that to our concept plan for a development project, and we will move forward with that. So I don't know that we will have anything before you next month, but hopefully by January we'll have something in place to share, and certainly we'll share progress as we go along with that for design, as well as the then when we do get to the construction phase, obviously we are going to be talking about the bidding process.
Right. All right. Any
Jim,
questions for Mr. Wyprecht?
Sorry, Mayor, I didn't mean to jump ahead of you there.
No problem, Councilman. Go ahead.
Just to clarify that we are taking into consideration the enhanced security measures that we've all been concerned with, because I don't know whether or not that would necessitate something different with the electrical grid or anything like that, but that is stuff that we are taking into consideration.
Yes, definitely. The components that we mentioned last month, the ability to isolate the lobby, to have a secure vestibule when people come in, the secure front window, more like what we have at the police department, some hardening of the front of the building, either with bollards or something in the facade itself, or some combination thereof. Those will all be part and parcel of the design.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for your work on that, Mr. Wyprecht. Any other questions regarding the architectural services for city office repair and renovation? Okay. Also in new business, I think Councilman Vigliotti has something you'd like to bring up this evening?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. So in past years, everybody will remember that we kind of engage in, I guess you could call it almost a temporary staying of enforcing parking meters on weekends during the holiday season between Thanksgiving and New Year. And I forget whether or not we did that last year, but it is something that I would like to try again this year. Of course, anything we can do to help encourage the business climate in town, without getting in their way, I think is a really good thing for us to do. And I know that, in the past we've had concerns about residents and non-customers parking in those spots even on weekends when we were freeing them up for customer use. And so I got to thinking about maybe, how could we go about trying to deter that kind of activity? And of course, that got me thinking about the 1980s, right? Now, Councilman Haynes will be probably too young.
You'll be lost on this, but the rest of us will be fine.
History books don't exist.
Probably too young to remember this. Mr. Mayor, you probably will remember the tail end of it. I, of course, being 145 years old, remember it like yesterday.
You only dress like you're 145.
That's true, that's true. So the idea of parking validation, right? What a lot of our businesses do now is they will either run out to a customer who pulls up and give them a quarter, or when the customer enters the store, they'll give them a quarter to go out and feed the meter so the customer doesn't have to. Well, if we were to enact the free parking weekends, how would we go about, something similar? And I came up with the idea of a very simple parking pass. So instead of a customer being given a quarter, they'd be given one of these. And they're very simple, they're very straightforward, and they contain a spot for both the date and the store that issues the parking pass. And of course, you'd go stick it on your dashboard, and when the, police come by, they'd say, okay, well, this is a guy who, went to Rust and he's got the pass. So the importance of the date would be that it would be good for the entire day, right? So for example, if I went to Rust and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna buy this chair, but now I feel like I'm hungry, I'm gonna go over to Stonehouse, I'm good because I have one pass. Basically, it would expire at the end of the day, so that if somebody tries to sneak one over on the system and prints up their own pass or something, the date will make them an outlier, plus the fact that the issuer would sign their name or whoever. Like if I get an example, if it was Joe Wes's or something, then the police could go check with them and say, hey, did you issue this particular parking pass? I think that might go a long way towards helping enforce a compliance toward customer-only parking for the businesses. And again, it would run from Thanksgiving through the New Year on the weekends. And of course, I'm open to any suggestions or criticisms.
I think it's a great idea. And I think it also incentivizes people going into the store to get their pass. And they're kind of forced to look around a little bit. So even if they don't buy anything, if you're from out of town and you're visiting, you might not buy something, but you're at least incentivized to go into the store. The thing is, especially with, out-of-town visitors, what can we do to make people aware that these passes exist, besides social media, besides trying to put it out there? I mean, is there something we can put on the meters? Is there something we can give businesses to put up?
I'm glad that's exactly what I was thinking, is that what we would do. Now this I just threw together on Photoshop in a couple of minutes, right? This is something that we could email to all of the stores or print up copies ourselves and distribute to them. But the other thing we could do is something very similar to this, a simple flyer that could go in the window and said, customer parking passes here, come in and get one and you're good for the day.
Yeah.
And so anybody who's not aware of this on social media, anybody who hasn't found out about it, would actually show up at the store and be physically reminded that, hey, I got free parking for the day.
And maybe with the flyers, we'd want something a little bigger than an 11 by 18 piece of paper. In case you're driving by, you can notice in the window, like, oh, hey, this is a thing right now. Maybe I'll stop by.
Good idea. Very good idea. And I would be more than happy to create that. And again, if anybody has any criticisms or changes that they'd like to see to this, I'd be happy to entertain the ideas.
Festive it up a little bit. Make it a little more festive since it's a holiday season.
I can definitely do that.
Joe, would this pass have, I'd feel better if it had 2 hours, for instance, as a suggestion. I don't know, everybody's gonna spend 6 hours in most of these businesses, they might. And then,
Maybe a note on there says not valid for overnight parking.
yeah, so I mean, maybe certain hours of the day, maybe 7 a.m. to, pick what hours.
Well, then again, the meters only are active from 9 to 5, is that correct?
6.
6.
8 to 6.
8 to 6,
There you
okay.
go.
So after 6 o'clock, they don't need to feed the meters anyway. So I really don't think there's any restrictions that have to go on there at that point.
But
For
maybe
this
a-
evening, if I could, I think that the appropriate action for you would be to just vote that we're going to have the, stay of meter enforcement, and we can leave the particulars of what that's going to look like in terms of whether we have a pass or how Chief Etzler would like to handle it. Since we're not going to meet again before Thanksgiving and that would begin, I think the only official action we need at this point is just that we're going to do a stay of meter enforcement, and we can leave the details for, and I'd be happy to work with Joe and the chief to come up with how we are going to administer it, because we don't want something terribly complicated for anybody, and we don't want to do something that could put the police in a difficult situation in terms of enforcement. So I'd kind of like to defer to the chief as to how he sees the best plan to implement something like this. I don't think we got a lot of negative feedback in prior years as far as people parking there all day long, and defeating the, you know, the purpose of the stay of enforcement. I don't think we really had an issue with that I'm aware of.
Right, and I guess depending on what motion we want to make and vote on, if we simply say stay of enforcement, that kind of supersedes the parking passes, because stay of enforcement is a generic, we're not going to ticket at all. If we make it based on the parking pass idea, it's just something to consider if you craft a motion for this evening, if we want to consider the use of the parking passes along with the limited stay of enforcement, perhaps.
The other thing I want to add is there's pros and cons, I think, for each. The stay of enforcement extends the generosity to people downtown whose families might be visiting. So, you know, people that live in the houses along the street and things like that, you know, makes it more convenient for them to park in front of the house for the 1 or 2 or 3 nights that they might be there. So I think also we want to decide, is this something that we want to be more business focused or more downtown focused?
If we're waiving fees for all meters for those weekends, or enforcement of all meters for those weekends, then it would be, you know, potentially both residential and business related.
So then I think, to the mayor's point, we might not need a pass. We might just need to generate awareness of, hey, there's going to be a stay of enforcement during the holiday period. And I heard in the audience, you know, you just put bags over the meters. Maybe we can make them look a little festive or something and incorporate that with the decorations that we're doing. So,
may I make a comment?
I'll permit it today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it very much. Chris Tillman, George's on York, and Taneytown Chamber of Commerce. Speaking for the chamber, I would say that we would be very much interested in helping to promote this. The suggestion would be to make this kind of a lead in any kind of promotion that Main Street or that the city is going to do for the downtown businesses. To Mr. Haynes' point, I think this needs to be directed toward the businesses. That's where the issue lies. That's the whole purpose for the meters. I think if you open it up to the residents, you're going to open up a can of worms with the businesses you don't want to open. But I think that this, you know, one of my missions with the chamber for the coming year or however long is that we quash the parking myth once and for all. There are plenty of places to park in this town, and we need to know, people need to know that there are plenty of places to park in this town. And I think that this, you know, if we make this kind of a feature of promoting downtown for the holidays, I think is a direction we should go. And the chamber stands ready to help with that with any way we can.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Tillman.
much.
Now let's keep in mind the stay of enforcement historically has only been the weekends during that period. And I only think of that when you mentioned about someone being there 3 or 4 days, you know, visiting for holidays. This is only weekends that we have done that stay of enforcement. So I'll entertain whatever motion someone would like to make based on the conversation we've had.
So let me ask this before I make a motion. Is it possible to combine the two? Could we have
Anything's possible.
Could we have the flyers out maybe during like a week-long period or a 2-week-long period leading up to Christmas, and then whatever weekend falls closest to Christmas, we could have the stay of enforcement, and that way be a little kind to residences?
Well, the stay of enforcement has been the weekend after Thanksgiving, which is Small Business Saturday.
Okay.
Going all the way through the weekend following New Year's, I believe.
Right.
Or the weekend before New Year's, depending on how that works.
Could we modify it and just make it the stay of enforcement fall on the weekends of that period, and then we use...
Well, that's what it's...
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
how
okay,
it's always
okay,
been,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
I misunderstood. So
No.
we keep that in place and then defer to this for the weekdays.
That's an interesting idea. You do the parking passes for weekdays, and
'Cause
then
I mean,
have
not
the full
all businesses are going to be open on the weekends, and not all businesses are going to be open during the weekdays.
I would have no problem with that. So, customer part, okay.
Councilman Fuller has...
You know,
Her-
when we were talking about doing something to the meters, so does that mean that we have to then go out and cover the meters every weekend?
I think at this point, we'd have to move away from doing anything to the meters. Yeah.
Well, my question is that?
Unless we have a group of volunteers willing to go out and bag
Well,
the
I was
meters.
going to ask, is that too much of an ask?
You live on Main Street.
I
That's
live
a
on
great
Main Street.
thing for you.
I could do it myself, and I'm not kidding. I mean,
Right.
you know, the thing is all of this is useless if people don't know about it.
Absolutely.
So you have to be in their face about this type of stuff. I can't imagine anything being more in someone's face than bags on the meters or whatever you want to put on there.
Right.
Bags over their face.
And then you take them off during the week so people
More
know,
obvious.
okay, well, this isn't in effect anymore. But then you have those out there, and it's like, well, there's a sign there. Maybe I should go in that store.
I mean, if we can get somebody to do it.
And you kind of mix the best of both worlds. Because the other thing, and the reason why I've got this soft spot for the whole, you know, downtown families bit is because, I mean, it's Christmas, you know, and you want to, I feel like that's a bit in the spirit of Christmas, so.
Give me 1 minute to try to scribble down a motion, if that's okay. I'm gonna try to
Well,
incorporate everything, all right.
Okay.
Joe, while you're doing that, Mr. Mayor, if you want to recognize Mrs. Tillman's comment.
Hello. Sharon Tillman, George's on York Bed and Breakfast. A comment about bags on meters. Typically, that means you can't park there at all. And that's what consumers will most likely assume when they see bags.
And that's a good
meters.
point. And it doesn't have to be bags, but I think something that says, hey, you can park here, you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah,
you know?
but bags, I think, say the opposite, that you
Okay.
can't park here at all. So
Right.
just keep that in mind as you're planning.
Very good point. Thank you, ma'am.
You're interested in doing it not just on weekends or only on weekends?
Well, I think the
Okay.
idea is the weekends would be the stay of enforcement. Weekdays would be parking passes.
And we would just do that for the entire holiday period. And when the
Right.
new year comes, we
It
do
all
away
goes
with
away.
all of it.
All right, so I will make a motion to stay the enforcement of parking meters from Thanksgiving through New Year's on weekends, and with the parking pass, or I guess depending on how Chief Etzler would be interested in enforcing the customer-only parking during the weeks.
Of a parking pass to be
Okay.
developed.
Authorize the use of a parking pass to be developed. I'm sorry, Clara. I'm so sorry.
I would
All right.
pass them in a note.
Okay.
Now,
We need a second to discuss.
Yes,
yeah, you
yes, we do need the second on that motion first. Do we have a second to that?
Seconded.
Okay.
Okay.
Some discussion. Mayor Pro Tem?
Now, you said weekdays and weekends. Do you need to specify what weekdays and when the weekend starts? If the weekend
Yes.
starts.
Is Friday a weekend?
Is Friday the weekend or is it Saturday?
What is it? Okay, well, hold on. We can
You know,
ask this
you want
historically.
Monday to what's the weekend?
Historically, it's been Saturday, Sunday.
Okay, then let's keep
Okay.
it that way.
Let's keep it that way.
So you need to specify that.
Okay.
I guess in your motion.
Well, okay,
Thinking.
we will,
Okay, give me one. I'm going to try to revise that.
well, stand by. Well, instead of revising your motion, we will do an amendment to
All
the
right.
motion that specifies weekdays, Monday through Friday, weekends, or Saturday, Sunday. Would someone like to make that motion for amendment?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. So I will be asking for a vote to approve the amendment to the motion, which will specify weekdays, Monday through Friday, weekend, or Saturday, Sunday. Is there any discussion on that? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Very good. Now we go back to the original motion, which has now been amended, saying that we will have a stay of enforcement on parking meters on weekends from Thanksgiving through the holiday season. We'll say around New Year's. We'll have to figure out exactly which weekend that will be. And then on weekdays, we will authorize the use of parking passes. Is that the correct?
Business parking pass.
Business parking passes, thank you. That has already been moved and seconded. Is there any additional comments on that? Or have we beat that to death enough? Very good. All in favor of the amended motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Very good. Thank you, Councilman Bigliotti.
On that note, I would suggest.
Dear
that-
Lord,
No,
are you
I would
serious?
just suggest that we let Nancy know so she can put it in.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I know that's going on.
And I also think that we want to instruct Chief Etzler to work with businesses and perhaps the chamber and how they want to address the issue of abuse should it ever come up, because inevitably it'll come up once. So
Yeah, because that has to be in December 10th, right?
The newsletter?
I mean,
No,
November 10th.
Yeah.
November 10th, yes.
Yeah. So make sure she gets,
Make sure she knows. You'll work with the police department, Chief Etzer specifically. Also reach out to the chamber and see what kind of assistance they would like to offer to work with businesses.
Especially if they have an open storefront. I know they're putting some pop-up shops in, but maybe they've got a large window that we can actually put a sign in that says something to the, you know, the fact that we do offer holiday parking.
yep.
Very good.
I will do, thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Any other new business we'd like to bring forward? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
No council member reports?
Counselor,
Sorry. I was all excited after that conversation
Got
to
so
go
tired of
home.
hearing us talk.
He just can't wait to get rid of us. That's what it is.
I tell you, I was afraid what that was going to go into if we do council member reports. Councilman Haynes, we'll start with you today.
So I have nothing new to report.
Then why are we doing this?
We covered everything that I would have reported earlier in the meeting, so that's all from me.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Hale, what do you have for me today?
Pretty much same thing here, except that we will be meeting on the 15th and moving forward with trying to find a candidate for the Parks Director's position. Look forward to getting to work on that.
I believe we have 6 interviews scheduled that day, so it'll be a
Wow.
day. Yes, we got, was it 42 applications for that? Yeah, and some really great applicants. So that's a very exciting thing. Anything else, Councilman Hale? Mayor Pro Tem Foster, what do you have for us this evening?
okay, just like to remind everybody that Saturday, November 30th is American Express Small Business Saturday. And December 7th is a tree lighting ceremony in Memorial Park.
It starts at 3. It starts at 3. It's not on there, but we decided
It
today.
does start at
Starts
3.
3 o'clock.
Starting at 3 p.m.
It'll be an entire evening worth of activities, so come and stay for the long haul.
Yeah, Commissioner, what are you doing that night?
The 7th.
December 7th.
You should be getting an invitation, but yeah,
But
put that in
put
your
it
calendar
down
right now. Right now. And bring the grandkids and everybody.
And date to be determined, there will be a ribbon cutting for the new Taneytown liquors.
Great. Anything else, Mark?
That's it.
Excellent. Councilman Vigliotti, what do you have for us?
The police departmental report for last month for October 2019. The total number of dispatched or generated calls for service numbered 357. The total number of citations issued equaled 53. The total number of adult arrests were 11. The total number of juvenile arrests were 0. And the total number of warnings issued were 61. In terms of good news, interviews and background investigations for prospective candidates are in process, and we hope to have 3 new officers hired by the end of the month that will start the academy in January. In terms of community outreach, Officer Schaefer, Marshall, Myers, and our receptionist at the police department, Donna Schreiner, attended the Taneytown Library's Trunk or Treat event. Multiple officers attended the Nightmare on Main Street event that included a sidewalk parade, trunk or treat at the Taneytown Volunteer Fire Department Carnival grounds, and concluded with a costume contest. The event was well attended and a huge success. The entire department once again will come out in full force on Halloween for trick or treat. Although inclement weather shortened the event, it was still well attended. The chief would like to extend his personal and special thanks to mayor and city council members for coming out and helping handing out the glow sticks. And of special note, you may notice this month that the officers will start to look a little scruffy. This is because the entire department is holding their second annual No Shave November event. Each officer has personally donated money to participate in the event. This year's donations will go to zerocancer.org. This nonprofit organization is investing in patient support programs, research for better diagnostics, and creating awareness of prostate cancer. And that is it from me this evening.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Fuller, what do you have for us this evening?
I forgot my paper and I'm having a senior moment, but we really didn't have anything.
Delayed agenda.
I know, well, and that's it, I was gonna say, Diane mentioned the Christmas event. We are working on getting all the pieces to really update and add to the main street. So in addition to the snowflakes, we're hoping there'll be more lights and decorations. We're already starting to work down at the park, and we actually dragged out the very old decorations that were up in the shop that I think used to string across the street.
No way.
And we're gonna see if we can't utilize them somewhere.
Awesome.
I'm not gonna plug them in because I don't know what they're gonna do. But some of them are actually made of aluminum. Like the foil part is actual metal, so we gotta keep that away from wires and stuff too.
Just throw all caution to the wind. Just
Yeah, really, I mean, it's
an
gonna
old-fashioned
It'll be
Christmas.
sparkly, how about that?
That's-
It's gonna be
that's
really
right.
sparkly. So, yeah, we definitely are underway, and we've got lots of people offering to volunteer, and we'll always take more. But looking forward to really getting started. Let's hope it doesn't snow. That's what they're calling for this weekend, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's exciting. Anything else, Councilwoman Fuller?
No, I think that'll do it.
Very good. October, there were a number of things that went on around the city. First off, we did have members of council and myself attend the MML Fall Conference down in Cambridge. Attended some great workshops, met some really neat people there. Came back with some good information. Also in October, Councilman Haynes and I were able to greet Carroll County Chamber leadership. It's a class, is that? Yeah. I can't remember what they call it exactly. That senior moment there. I'm sorry? Leadership Carol. Leadership Carol, thank you, that's the one. They came to Antrim for lunch, and so Councilman Haynes and I were there to greet them, welcome them to Taneytown. Let's see, that's probably about it. Halloween was great. We had a very nice night of trick-or-treating. We did also have the ribbon cutting at St. James Christian Orthodox Church right up the street. That same night was the trunk or treat at the park. And then also Tannery Barn had a quasi-open house, just kind of show off their new facility. So look the next several weeks to see them opening up finally. That's going to be a great addition to the city. Other than that, we did have the business breakfast last week, the commissioner's breakfast we spoke about earlier. And other than that, there wasn't much going on. With that, now I will seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second, very good. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Good night, everybody. Thank you.